Hey there, I'm Brittany Schroeder, and business and marketing are my jam. I'm here to walk you step by step through this crazy thing we call business. I'm a small town girl, chocolate eating, Diet Coke drinking mom, marketing guru, automation Jedi, and all around good time. This is your weekly dose of all things business and life, sprinkled with some fun. This is the Redefine Business Podcast. Welcome to another episode of Redefine Business Podcast. I'm excited about my guest today, and the reason why is because I'm constantly talking about networking and collaborating, and we met through a collaboration. We both got asked to speak at a summit, an online summit, and I'm trying to remember, but I think it was like a meet and greet where we were meeting some of the other speakers, and we got on and we just started talking, chatting it up, and we just really I felt like we hit it off, but maybe that was in my head. I feel like I'm friends with everybody, but I just felt like I loved what she did. And I was like, oh, I have to have you on my podcast. So welcome to the podcast, Megan Williams with Self-Publishing Agency. Welcome, Megan.
Hi, thank you for having me. And don't worry, it wasn't just in your head. It was in mine as well.
Yes, we were totally. Yes, we were like
the great thing about having a podcast, however, is that you do have something. It's not just let's stay in touch on Instagram. By having a podcast, you really are able to extend your network and extend your conversation further, because realistically we're both busy business owners. What are the odds that we're going to just jump on a call and just chat? So
yeah, I know.
Great way to extend your network. Well done.
It is such a good reason to, if you just need one reason to start a podcast, you really get to meet some really amazing people, and people love to be on podcasts. So it's a win-win, I think. So, well, Megan, tell my listeners just a little bit about you and what you do.
Right. So, like a lot of business owners or entrepreneurs who've created something that either didn't exist before or it's an improvement on what was existing, I started the self-publishing agency about 7 years ago, born of a need that I found when I was writing my first book. And my early career was in communications, and I was in communications in the healthcare industry and doing PR and advertising with them. And like lots of authors, life kind of gave me a story that wouldn't let me rest until I did something about it. And I decided to write a book. But because I had my work experience was in communications, I did understand how to piece together professional teams and how to market things and talk about them publicly. I was pretty sure I wanted to do this book on my own with my own team that I had assembled. But there's a big knowledge gap between what I knew about storytelling and actually how to professionally publish a book. So then I'd obviously seen all the movies where people get paid millions of dollars and, retreat on a lakeside cabin and that becomes their career. But that isn't actually the reality for most authors, whether they're traditionally published or through self-publishing. And so I started looking at different publishing options with who could fill in that knowledge gap for me. And I spent a year researching what was available, and there wasn't really a company that I could go to that would either just be able to fill in that knowledge or answer those questions for me without taking my royalties, without having control of my book somehow, without trying to change my story or making me pay for things that I didn't need to pay for. So, like I said at the beginning, for those of us who are building businesses that either didn't exist before or improving existing ones, you just kind of build what doesn't exist. So that's how the self-publishing agency came to be. And hundreds and hundreds now of best-selling authors later, it's a business that is one of the most rewarding things that I could be a part of, or that I could imagine for myself.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. I think a lot of people who have had a life experience or a story, they think I should write a book, or they're told people tell me all the time, you need to write a book, And I'm like, yeah, I do. I think for me, I'm very analytical, I'm very left brained. And so one of the things that kind of I would say holds me back is like, oh, I'm not like a strong writer. So do you see that a lot when people first come to you? Like talk a little bit about that.
Yes, I think if I'm being honest, most people aren't like born writers. They're not, there's some people who love the craft of writing, and then there's other people who maybe even more than the writing, just love the storytelling. They love being able to share their information or share their story. And that would be the majority of authors that we work with. They're business owners, they're people who've been through a life experience, or they're people with that crackling idea inside of them that they're like, I can't get rid of this children's book idea. I need it out. I want to be able to share this thought or this message or what have you. So part of the work that we do with authors is that you don't need to be a good writer to be able to have a great book, because similar to how we don't cut our own hair, I mean, I guess we all could cut our own hair, but you don't. You go to somebody who's going to make you look good. So that's part of the people that we assemble on and our writers team. When they come to us with a story, they might have a first draft and just bang it out and then want to bring an editor onto their team. In some cases, we actually work with authors to build out what are they even going to write? What are they going to say? Because somebody like yourself, you've got a bunch of things you could write about. You could write about your life experiences, or you could write about business. And either way, you kind of need to build out like a business plan. What is the plan? What is the direction this book is going to go? And then you build it out with ideally a team, which is the same reason, like, I'm going to grow my hair now. I need somebody to cut it so I look good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you break it all into smaller pieces and it becomes, I hope, less overwhelming for people. And that's kind of how everything gets done, I think.
Yeah. So do you do that? Tell us a little bit about like how you help clients. Is so you kind of shared that it's the writing of the book. Is it the marketing of the book? Like, is there different, like, is there different packages? Is there different, like, plans for different people? How does that work?
Well, we've been in the business for a while now. So we've gotten really good at anticipating what are people coming to us looking for, and then how do we support them and go from that zero to hero experience where they go from I have an idea to now I'm a professionally published author. And one of the things that we have recognized is that whether you have actually a manuscript written or need something written, there's so many other pieces that you need to add on and build on itself along the way. And those pieces need to be tailored to each author. So when somebody hires us, they're hiring us as a traditional publisher. So a full support team of like project management, strategists, branding, marketing, and then we add on to the team from there as necessary. Because some people are really strong writers, or they've hired somebody else to edit their book before they come to us. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to, we sort of custom and tailor our work and who's on their team after they've started working with us. Mm-hmm. So we kind of have what we call as a bestseller package, and it's just it's a 15 months of one-on-one work, whether that's one-on-one work with the project managers, strategists. We work with printers and run numbers and do the calculations for profit. We do the entire thing that a publishing company would do. And when the book is ready to go to market and we help them launch it into the world, whether that be on Amazon or in local bookstores, we are the only agency that we know of, at least in North America, that doesn't take any royalties from our authors, because we feel that it's really important that if you're going to be not only investing financially in your story, but all of, emotionally, et cetera, we want you to have complete agency and autonomy for the rest of time with this book. And, if we sell our company in 10 years, we don't want you to have your title come away with us and you no longer have access to your own books and your own story. So our model is a bit of the inverse of the traditional world. Yeah. Where traditionally people get paid advances, but now I own your book. We're in the opposite. You invest in your story and then you own it forever. And you can go and speak at Southwest by Southwest in 5 years because you're now on a stage and a speaking tour. And I don't believe that we should be the ones that are like taking a cut of that, because it's your story and we're just the ones who are helping you launch it.
I love that. So I know that this question is going to be hard, it's hard to answer and you might not be able to, but if somebody give us, and I know you can't give us an exact time frame because I know this with working with my own clients, like everybody works at a different pace, but tell us, like, from writing to like actually being published, what is like, how much time should people expect? And again, I know everybody's different, everybody works at a different pace, but what is like, tell us like the average, or people take about this long, or I know that it's different, but give us kind of a range. If I were to come to you and say like, okay, I want to write a book, I am going to start, like, how long should I expect that it will take before it's actually like able for somebody to buy? If I haven't written anything yet.
If you haven't written anything yet, I would say 12 to 15 months is probably really comfortable, but that's with throttle down on writing. And then if you come to us with a pretty flushed out manuscript or a book, you've built out on your, if, for example, somebody like yourself, who, if you're writing a business book, if you've got like, what some of your core messages are, and the book is just an elaboration of that, I would say you could probably be to market in 9 months to a year. 3 months for editing, 3 months for design, and then sort of time in between for both marketing and printing. So we once we put your train on the track, it moves. Our job is to make sure that it moves as steadily as possible, because on one end we know that the goal here is to support people's businesses and to get that book and their messaging out as promptly and as relevantly as possible. But also we know that nobody does their best work when they're stressed. So we want to keep the pace, but not keep you like totally gassed that you like get to the end and you're like, I need a break. The rest of my business fell apart. Because
well, and I assume that when somebody comes to you and they're ready to invest, that they're probably like ready to go. They're not just like, I'm kind of thinking of this, but if they invest in, I mean, that's how like, I always say, if you pay attention and you get stuff done. So you probably have a lot of that mentality. So, okay. So here's my next question for you. If somebody wants to self-publish, and again, I know that there isn't just like one answer because everybody's different. What should people expect to pay to when they work with an agency?
Good question. I think I like to make sure that
give us the low range, give us the high range.
I'd say the range, the minimum would be, if I do a quick tally, I would say the minimum you're going to pay for either a business book or memoir, because children's books are a little bit different because you're paying for illustrations and less for editing, but illustration costs. But I would say you're in the pocket between like 7,000 to 10,000, I think. And that's, that feels like probably a pretty comfortable range. And
that's what I thought it would be.
Yeah. And our goal is to, a few things is to never, we don't want people to just take out huge chunks on their line of credit or, or go into debt, because debt equals stress for a lot of people. So our idea is that a lot of the expenses get paced out over the experience or while moving along. You wouldn't pay for an editor right away because you don't know who your editor is going to be, and you don't know what the estimate is going to be. And the other part that we believe is really important when it comes to this type of investment is that we also, if we're going to give you an opportunity to invest in your story, we should also be giving you an opportunity to make a return on that investment. So part of the work that we do with authors is we do a lot of calculation and management of the margins. So because we get treated like a trade printer from book printing, for example, we're able to help authors. Like if you can buy your book for $5, but you're selling it for $35, especially if it's a business book, you can start making your investment back pretty quickly within the year of publishing it. Not to mention the street cred.
I was curious about that because I'm like, I know a lot of people who have self-published, and I don't think any of them did it to make money. I think that they did it just for like the street cred, like just saying like, hey, I'm published, I've written a book. And even, or telling your story, like I shared with you that like, I would love to write a book someday. It's not about making money. It's really about just like writing it down and sharing like my story. And hopefully if I help one person, I help one person. But I'm curious, like, in the publishing, like how, like I would guess, but I do not know because I don't know anything about it, but I would guess it's a small percentage of people who really make, in the overall like picture of everybody who's published this book, I would guess it's probably a smaller percentage of people who are like really make like a ton of money. You know what I mean? But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, I think some people, I think it's because success is an interesting, when we go, I'm sure as a business owner, you're also like aware people are always asking the question, like, so how much money on average do you think people will make after I make this investment?
Yes.
And that's a rational, like very like frontal lobe question of like,
Yes.
this is going to help justify my investment. But the really interesting part, both financially and it sounds really like lofty, but I mean this really sincerely, and it's very true that the success needle changes after someone publishes. With all of the authors that we've worked with, the question about my money changes because publishing a book has changed their life. In some people's cases, it wasn't monetarily, but it did change an opportunity for them. We had one author who, while he didn't make his like money back in book sales, somebody heard him on the radio as an expert and an author, and they gave him a $40,000 contract to like do consulting for their company. And that changed his trajectory for his career after that. So we can't say, yes, this book made you money, but we can trace how it changed your life. In some other people's cases, it wasn't about the money as it was that their family took them more seriously now, or somebody in the workplace, they got a job because now all of a sudden somebody saw them as a writer, not just somebody who did analytics. So, they were given an opportunity that they might have not otherwise had. So again, that how we measure success before an investment, especially when it comes to publishing, changes dramatically. And there's this unquantifiable part of publishing that kind of always comes up because you might never actually know. When you said, I would love it if my book just changed one person's perspective or helped one person. The thing is we will never know what that book did for someone, because very rarely, outside of a few Amazon reviews, do we stop and say, like, I was actually at brunch yesterday and I said this one thing that I read in this book this one time, and that person relaxed more because of it, or that mom changed her perspective, or that there's this thing that goes out into the world when you share a part of yourself with that, and you'll never be able to get it. You'll never get it back, and you'll never be able to touch it or find out just how far it's rippled, because changing another mom's life might make
the domino effect.
She's part of her own ecosystem that changes now. Maybe she's a better wife now. Maybe that husband does better at his job because his home life is happier. And maybe that kid is a better friend to someone else who, so there's a ripple that can happen, and you just can't touch it. You'll never know what bookshelves or baths your book fits in.
Oh, for sure. It's kind of funny. I have a story. I had a friend, he's self-published, and he had a story where he was at I think he was a CEO of this company. And he had long story short, he ended up having to go to prison for Medicare fraud because he was like the top dog. He had a bunch of people under him committing fraud, and he had to go to prison. And how he dealt with it was by running. And now he's like this ultra runner, and he does these 50, 100-mile races. And so he wrote this book, and he did it where it probably has like a more professional name than this, where it's like he's talking about when he's in prison, and then he's talking about running this 50-mile race at the same time. And he's showing the parallels between it. And anyway, so really great book. And he was telling me that he was running. He lives in Utah, and he was running up in the mountains, and he passed this couple, and he passed him, and then he heard somebody like yell his name, and they yelled his name, and he stopped, and he's like, did they just yell my name? And he turns around, and they said, hey, are you, and they said his name. And they came up to him and said, I read your book, and we have been going through something very similar in our life. And my mom gave me this book. And she's like, can I just give you a hug? And he said, it was like that moment right there was worth the entire thing. Like just having that one person that he, and I just love it. I think that's like such a cool story that we, especially if we are trying to make change in any shape, way, and form, like if we just have the mindset, like if I can just help one person, if I can just change one person's life, like it will totally be worth it. So I love that. That's such a, like, such a good point. Like I love just that thought of that. So,
and you might not even like a privilege of writing and becoming an author is that you get that encounter, whether it be in the mountains of Utah or you get an email that somebody did read your book and they were changed. The privilege is actually hearing it.
Yeah.
The reality is that you might change more lives than you will change more lives than you'll ever know, but you may never actually even hear about it. So it can be like a lonely world, but also this, it's a little bit magical because you'll never know.
Yeah.
Like it could be years.
Yeah. Well, and as far as like monetary and success, being a marketing coach, I also realized like marketing is kind of complex because, what works for one person doesn't work for another, and everybody is different and everybody connects with people different. And so it's really just kind of, I always tell like my clients, I don't know if that's going to work. You got to test it. Like you got to test it. You just keep testing. Yeah. So marketing can be kind of complex too. And there isn't like any definitive thing that this works every single time, or, it's different. It's
always the first department that gets budget cuts. It's always the area of your life that you're like, oh, I don't need to spend money on that. Or because you cannot prove, like, unless you're going year over year, I spent this much money last year and now I'm spending this much. And that, like, it's very hard to prove marketing success, never mind when somebody's trying to make that investment. Be like, should I pay her to do this? Or should I pay to have a book? Because I don't know what the result is going to be. Yeah. But ultimately the result is that, your life enhanced.
And I love your answer to that too, because I feel the same way. Like we have to be a realist, because I feel like there's so many businesses out there that are making these promises that are, in a way a tad like deceiving, because, we only share the success stories, and it's very subjective. And so, it's just like, it's up to you. It really, like, you're a determining factor, and, how much work do you want to put in? And it's really like, it's, you just never know. But I love your answer that you said. I'm actually going to steal that from you, Megan. But like, I love it. It's just like, it changes your life. Like at the end of the day, it changes your life because of just the experience. And just, if you just touch one person, like that is success, so that's really powerful too. So I love it. Well, Megan, tell my listeners how they can find you if they are interested. I know that I am like, I'm going to write a book. Like you've totally inspired me. Like I've been saying this for a long time, I will admit, but I'm like, oh, I need to do this. I need to do this. So it was good for me to talk to you. If I follow through, that will be another story, but like you have definitely inspired me.
We can document the entire thing on the podcast. And the one thing I will say to somebody like you or anyone else who's been kind of like knows it's in them, but that feels a little bit like they're just staring up at the mountain of like, that looks like so much work on top of my existing busy life. I said this to Danielle, who is our mutual contact that hosted the summit. You don't have to write the big book yet. Like you don't have to write the whole memoir. You don't have to write the entire business theory on something. You are allowed to start with a 20,000 word book. You're allowed to write a smaller book to get it going, to like get a taste for it. It can be a big thing with not being a long thing. Yeah. And so when you stare up at that mountain, maybe it's actually just a hill. Yeah. Maybe you don't have to like give a background story. You don't have to provide way more theory, because something that I find is really intimidating is the thought of like, there's so much to share. Where do you even begin? Yeah. Well, why don't you just start right in the middle? Yeah. Yeah. Like start where your value is, just start right there and bring me to now. Yeah. Well, and I think too, I mean, one of the things I in my head, I said, I need to do that. And I've been thinking like, okay, I'm going to do that. But it's like anything in our life. Like we have these two excuses: is I don't have time, I don't have money. But if it's a priority, you make time, you make money. And so I just had that thought. But when I was saying I need to do this, I'm like, I had the thought like, I need to make this a priority. Like I've been talking about doing this. I just say, make it a priority. I can figure out all the rest, but make it a priority. So
if you have that book in you, then make it a priority. So Megan, tell my listeners how they can find you and work with you.
Well, it's a super simple just for SEO purposes. So we're the self-publishing agency everywhere. As a website, on social, YouTube, the self-publishing agency. That's it. It's pretty straightforward. And then, if you're curious but not certain, I would say spend some time on our Instagram and our YouTube. We've got a lot of really cool author stories, and the diversity there is, you just get exposure and get a taste for other people doing interesting things, and that, if at the very least, will inspire you to do something like interesting for yourself.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, like I prepped you at the beginning, I like to end all of my podcasts with asking my guests what is one pet peeve and one simple pleasure. So Megan, tell us your pet peeve.
People, and I've done this too, but it bothers me more. People who have poor grammar on their social media posts, the misuses of like there are drive me nuts. It's a small pet peeve, but it makes me think that one, you were too rushed, and two, that like it's just a chip away at your credibility. So
yeah. There's some pretty funny memes with like improper grammar. My mom and my sister are both teachers, and so they're always like that. And I've actually done that before, where I have mixed, like I put a post up and it did really well, and somebody messaged me like, you spelled your wrong, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, that is totally going. I don't care how many it has. Like, that is so embarrassing. It's gone. So
exactly. No, I'm right there with you. And yeah, so lucky is the person who's got friends who are power texting you.
Thank
quickly
you.
Before anybody else sees this.
Yes, for sure.
So we're not void of it, but it's the overconfidence sometimes that I think that bothers me the most, when they're like, oh, I guess that's just how I did it.
Yeah, for sure.
Drives me nuts.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What was the next question?
Simple pleasure. Something that's simple that brings you joy.
Oh, getting in a body of water, jumping from a dock, a pier, walking in from we live near the ocean here in Vancouver, and anytime I can slip in, even if it's cold, it feels like I'm getting like 3 minutes of vacation in the middle of the day.
That is a good one. That is a good one. Well, Megan, thank you so much. We will put all your information in the show notes, but thank you so much for coming on. It was so fun chatting with you.
Likewise.
Let's not stop the party here. Head on over to my Instagram or Facebook group, Redefine Your Business, and let me know your thoughts about today's show. I will see you again, same time, same place, next week.